first graders and their song. I'm going to guess, I might be wrong, but as I listened and watched you all sing, I felt like I saw some ASL, some sign language, so they sing very good. I enjoyed that, so I'm honored to be here. Let me get a few things out of the way. My birthday last week, I turned 65 years old. And I say that to you all this morning because I'm able to go way back in my reflections of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As I look at the first graders and some of the younger students. I was around your age when I first heard the name Martin Luther King Jr. So I want to talk about my reflections from back in the 60s when I grew up, but also how, as we are now in the 21st century, a lot of the things that I heard about and then would read about still hold true today in terms of the things that he wanted to see all people achieve. So with that, I'm going to start my little presentation, and hopefully we have time for questions and answers. And I just want to spend some really good time with you all this morning. As you can see, memories of a leader, Martin Luther King Jr. We've seen his photo and know his face. We have a holiday coming up. Well, I first heard of the name Martin Luther King Jr. when I was about 5 years old. I was a handsome kid. I don't like to brag, but I was a good-looking 5-year-old. That's me at 5 years old, and I had to shave my mustache for that picture. And, but around that time, you know, and are you guys able to see okay? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll stand behind the podium for a little while, but also want to get up close. But I was about 5 years old. That was 1965. And I would hear the name Martin Luther King on the news. My parents, those are my parents, Samuel Sr. and Ellen. My parents watched the news every night on television. Now, I didn't sit down and watch everything per se, but you could hear what was going on the television. And I would hear the name Martin Luther King Jr. And when I would hear his name, it was always associated with things like civil rights and marches. He fought for the rights of people like me, African Americans, people, minorities. He wanted to see equality amongst everybody. And he sometimes, or many times, entered treacherous situations to help fight the battle. But that's how I heard his name. Now, he came back on to tell the world that we had lost Martin Luther King Jr. I can look at all of you and tell you, in my house, the air of sadness hit. In my neighborhood, the air of sadness came over us. The next day when we went to school, you could hear a pin drop in every classroom. It was just this amazing air of sadness. We were all sad. I grew up in a black neighborhood. I went to a school, all black. And we were all just sad because it felt like we had lost our leader, the person who would fight for civil rights and justice, and he was gone like that. And we came to count on Martin Luther King to teach us things like honesty. He would fight for opportunity, peace, equality, basically hope. I'll go back. I want you all to remember, some of the older students know when I talk about acronyms, but you take hope, you take opportunity, you take peace, you take equality, you take the first letter from each of those words, and you make that acronym, HOPE. Well, that's what and who Martin Luther King was to all of us. He represented hope. And then he was gone. And it was just sad. All across America, it was like that, just sadness. But then, the sadness erupted. And I think we all know how that feels sometimes. When something happens, we start off being sad about it. But then it simmers and we become angry. And that's what happened after he was assassinated. That sadness turned into anger, and all across the country, people started doing the very things that Martin Luther King didn't want people to do. And that's violence. He did not condone violence. But there were fires in neighborhoods, clashes with police, just really terrible things. As I mentioned, the things that Martin Luther King didn't want people to do. But that's what happens when you're confused and you just don't quite know how to handle a situation like that. So I'm going to get back to honesty, opportunity, peace, and equality. And I want you all to see each of these traits through my eyes as a boy growing up into a man. I'm going to start with peace. I'm not going to go in order. But I'm going to start with peace. Okay? I mentioned when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I was 8 years old. The next year, I'm age 9. I'm in the 4th grade. I'm at Parkwood Elementary School. I was in the choir. Do we have musical students here? Where my choir people? I know you all are in the choir. Y'all sing real good. But if you're a musician, if you play music or you sing, clap your hands. Well, no, who else? I was an okay singer. I was in the choir. I played trumpet. I was so good at trumpet, they put me on tuba. You guys are laughing. It's not that I was bad at trumpet. I was so good that they said, okay, we think he can play the tuba. That's another story for another day. But I was a good musician, and I was a good singer, and our choir director was a woman named Helen Hardy. Now, before I tell you all the story, I want to make sure that everybody understands when I talk about these situations, it's necessary for me to let you all know when I say that I'm black and my teacher was white. You just have to understand those times and what was usual and what was unusual, okay? So my choir teacher was a white woman named Helen Hardy. And for whatever reason, she kind of favored me over most of the students. Well, Miss Hardy had a party at her home. Now this is my home, in my neighborhood, Cleveland. Miss Hardy lived in the suburbs of Cleveland. And she held a party called a peace party. This was about a year after Martin Luther King had been assassinated, and we were starting to come around and find some normalcy. And she wanted me at her home. I had never been to the home of somebody who was white. I wasn't scared, I was nervous. They lived in the suburbs. I had never been in the suburbs. So, you know, big house, nice house. You saw my house. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like the suburbs. My mom dressed me up. She put on my Sunday best. So I knew it was serious, because she dressed me up. And she said, you'll have a good time. And Miss Hardy came by and picked me up, and she took me to her house. And I was nervous the whole time, because I was wondering, where am I going? And what's going to happen? She pulled the driveway, and her son, Henry, who was my age, 9 years old, and I swear to you, he looked like he was 27. This dude was so big. If he didn't play basketball for his high school, later on in life. I don't know who would have. But he was a big kid. He had these thick glasses. He had on a white shirt, black slacks, just like I did. But Henry had a basketball goal. And I wanted a basketball goal in my backyard. My dad would never let me have one. Henry had a basketball goal, and that was our connection. We stayed in his backyard shooting baskets almost till the sun went down, and we talked, and we laughed, and we had a good time. I had never spent time around a white kid before. It was amazing to me, because after I beat him the first time, we didn't see each other as black and white. We were just two boys playing basketball in a backyard. And his mom let us just play and play and play. Now, inside, there were adults. There were 4, maybe 5 adult couples at this peace party. But none of the couples had children our age. So, as I came to understand, Miss Hardy wanted me there so that Henry wouldn't be by himself. And she thought I was the right person to come and keep him company. I wish I had been able to stay in touch with Henry Hardy, but I've never forgotten him. And I've never forgotten what Miss Hardy was trying to teach me that day, is that it didn't matter to her what color I was. She just thought I'd be a good playmate. Equality. As I grew up and became a junior high and senior high student, things sort of changed. That fun that I had with Henry Hardy, black kid, white kid, everything seemed harmonious. Things changed when I got to junior and senior high school. I went to a high school in Cleveland, Ohio. I went to a junior high, Margaret Spellecy, and then we moved on to Collinwood High School. That's me. I mean, that's not me. I wasn't, I wasn't a student then. I didn't have gray hair. One day I drove to my high school and took a picture in front of it, but that's the high school, Collinwood High School, that I went to. And when I went to Collinwood, this is one of the stories, one of many. There were a lot of what are known as race riots. The school was in a white neighborhood, and they didn't want minority students in the neighborhood. So there were fights almost daily, going back to the 60s when my sisters, the late 60s when my sisters were at that school, into the 70s when I was at that school. Students fought with each other because their skin was different colors. Maybe the dumbest thing ever. I don't like you. Why? Because you don't look like me. That's the dumbest thing, but we were kids and we didn't know any better. I'd get off the bus with other black students. We'd start walking to the school. Next thing we know, rocks and bottles and things flew at us. But I can tell you all, like when my sisters were there, they were in the newspaper quoted. It was a terrible thing. It was just a terrible thing. But by the time I got to the high school, and I was in the class of 1977, when we became sophomores, we made a pact that it was going to stop. There weren't going to be any more race riots. And this is how we did it. And when I say we, it started with our teachers. Our teachers would stop class. Our English teacher, for example, Miss Kruger, she would stop class and say, you all need to talk to each other. I think we forget that sometimes. That sometimes the best antidote is to talk. We were too busy throwing stuff at each other and not talking to find out who we are. The black students started talking to the white students. We started finding out that we had things in common. Yes, we did like the same kind of clothes. Yes, we did like the same kind of music. But when we got home, we didn't want to tell our parents that we liked that kind of music or those kind of clothes. Well, we started talking to each other. And once we found out through talking that we had a lot more in common than we knew, we stopped the fighting. And by the time my class of 1977 graduated, there were no more race riots at Collinwood High School. All by communication, all by talking, all by listening. And that's key when you're talking, is to also listen. So I made it through that phase of my life. And then comes opportunity. I got older, I moved to Denver, Colorado in 1984. When I moved here, I didn't know what I was going to do, who I was going to be. I was 24 years old. I didn't have a career. I knew how to do office work. But I knew I had some talent. I'm a very good writer. When I was in 3rd, 4th grade, I got in trouble because I was good at writing love letters. I'm looking down because, boy, my mother found out I was writing love letters to Evelyn McQueen. Boy, my mom let me have it. You can't be writing those letters to those girls, you know. But I was a good writer, aside from writing love letters. I was a good writer. And, but I never thought I would be a writer for a newspaper. But one day here in Denver, I decided I was going to give it a try. And I went to the Denver Post. And I got a meeting with the assistant sports editor, and I said, how do you become a sports writer? How does one become a sports writer? And he put me in touch with the high school sports editor, and things started to happen. Here's something that I hope all of you all remember. Opportunity provides air for ability to breathe. In other words, you can have the ability, but you, a lot of times, need the opportunity to show that you have the ability. So think of opportunity as air, and we need air to breathe. So if you get an opportunity, you'll get a chance to show that you have the ability. I wound up becoming a sports writer for the Denver Post and interviewing some of the greatest athletes. Y'all know who Coach Prime is? Well, before Coach Prime was Coach Prime, we called him Neon Dion. And he played 2 sports. Coach Prime was really, really, really good. If you don't believe him, just ask him, he'll tell you. But at one point, he played Major League Baseball with the Atlanta Braves, and he played in the National Football League with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, before he made it to the majors, he played for the Richmond Braves. They were a minor league team. He was in the minors trying to make it to the majors the same year that I was still a part-time writer trying to become full-time. And we merged. I went up to him to ask if he would give me a story. He said he would after the game. I wanted to do the story, I wanted to do the interview before the game. He said, no, we'll do it after the game. Well, of course, in that game, Coach Prime, and he knows this story. I told him back in April, so I'm telling y'all something. Don't think I'm just, putting him down because he's not here. He knows the story. Coach Prime struck out in the 9th inning with a chance to help his team tie the game. So after the game, he ran to the hotel and didn't give me the interview. And so my editors were mad because I didn't have the interview. A year later, he makes the team, and I get hired full-time, and our paths cross again. And I said, do you remember me? And he says, no, tell me why I should remember you. I said, yeah, last year you said you'd give me an interview, but then you struck out and you ran to the hotel, you didn't give me the interview, and I almost didn't get my job. He said, I did that to you? I said, yeah. He says, come here and sit down. And I ended up writing that story from that interview with Coach Prime. He gave me the interview that I desperately needed at the time. And then, ta-da! This was about 30 minutes after I told that story that I just told you. I told it to an audience of the CU. And what you don't see is after we took the picture, he goes, you didn't have to tell that story in front of everybody. But a great athlete, and he's proven to be a great coach up at CU. Just one of many people that gave me an opportunity to talk to him, and I was able to turn it in. I had the opportunity to cover the Olympics in Sydney, Australia in 2000, writing about people like Michael Johnson. I had the opportunity to interview Tiger Woods. Actually, it really wasn't as great as it looks. Tiger Woods was playing in a tournament, and I started walking in his path, not knowing that he could see me. He was on an elevated tee, for those of you on golf. And he was on an elevated tee, and I didn't know he could see me, and I was walking across looking at cactus, and all of a sudden this caddy goes, hey, you want to get out of there now, mate? And then I looked up, and Tiger was looking down at me all mad, and then he went back and he hit the ball, and the ball, his tee shot hit some guy in the head. It was not fun. And afterwards, the guy in the middle holding that microphone asked Tiger, he goes, hey man, what happened on 13? And Tiger goes, some idiot was walking down in the cactus, and then he looked at me, and that's the moment he looked at me and said, you were the idiot. But I had the opportunity to interview Tiger Woods, and I was on the Broncos Game Day Live show for 10 years on Channel 9. Yeah, that's a surprising look. That's my look. This is from my last year, or second to the last year on the show, back when the Broncos weren't winning any games, but I think they won that game, and I was like, what? But the opportunity, back in the 60s, these were the type of opportunities that a person like Martin Luther King was trying to fight for, to give people like me who you weren't seeing them on television, you weren't seeing them in the newspapers, but he was trying to say, these people have ability, give them an opportunity. These are the direct results of someone giving me an opportunity to show that I have some ability. 10 years, John Elway. I'm from Ohio. I really don't want to show much of this because John Elway did the drive years ago and beat my Cleveland Browns, and so I'm just going to leave that right there. But in 2019, I was inducted to the Denver Press Club Hall of Fame. There are only 5 sports writers in the Denver Press Club Hall. The Denver Press Club is the oldest press club in America. It's considered one of, if not the most prestigious press club in America. There are only 5 sports writers in the Press Club Hall of Fame, and there's only 1 African American, and that's me. So that right there is good. Again, the opportunity to show I have the ability is something that Martin Luther King stood for. As a comedian, I've performed shows for Magic Johnson, there's Peyton Manning. I didn't do a show for Peyton, I just wanted to show y'all that I got cachet there. Well, we did meet up. To see your name on a billboard, to do a show at Red Rocks. Yeah. Was I nervous? Yes. Very. But again, the opportunity. Somebody gives you an opportunity to show that you have ability. I'll kind of fast forward and just remind you, opportunity provides the air for ability to breathe. But lastly, honesty. Okay? Honesty. These are the words of Martin Luther King. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Has anyone heard those words before? Yes. Okay, that is great. That is one of his classic quotes. Now, I bring up honesty. I'm going to be honest with all of you here this morning. I totally agree with that statement from the late Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm going to be honest. I'm not talking about being judged by your skin tone. As a comedian, I just think it's funny if we actually know what our skin tone really is. What I mean is, we have a tendency to look at one another and just say, oh, he or she is dark, so they're black. Or he or she is light, so they're white. We just have two colors, black and white. But when you look at your neighbor, those aren't actually the colors. Now, I'm going to tell you all this story. How many of you all like to get on the internet and go like Facebook and all that stuff? I can tell. You can't. I like it. He goes, well, I can't. For those of you who can't, you're lucky. But I have a video clip on Facebook and really on YouTube as well. On Facebook with, get this, 35 million views. Say what? This row right here is really having me laughing right here. He said, say what? Wait till you, okay, and the video is titled True Color. So if you all will indulge me, I'm going to sort of perform the bit True Color. And I hope you will appreciate the humor in it. This goes back to me doing a show in the state of Nebraska. I don't know if anybody's here from Nebraska. Have anybody here? Teachers, students? A lot of times they don't like to let you know. I did a show in a very small town by the name of Hershey, Nebraska. I think you can get the whole town into your gym. It's a very small town. The population is 564. How many students can you get in this gym? About 600, 700, something like that. 1,000, yeah. So imagine a town half the size of this gym. Well, that's where I went to do this show. And the town's name really is Hershey. You can Google it. I'm not making it up. You know you're in a small town when you go through it, and all the businesses begin with the word the. And that was me. I'm driving through the bank, the store, the jail. And they had me doing a show at a place called The Bar. And when I walked in, the people looked at me and I looked at them, and I realized the town's name was Hershey, but they hadn't seen chocolate before until I arrived. Now, I wasn't scared, but I was concerned because I didn't know how they might react. But as it turns out, we all had a good time. They were having a good time. I was having a good time. But when I was getting ready to leave, the owner of the bar said, I would like to take a picture with you. And I said, sure. So she gave somebody her phone. And I put my arm around her. I wanted the picture to look official. And just when they were getting ready to take the picture, this woman, the owner, looked up at me and said something that I felt came from a good place in her heart. Sometimes people say things that sound mean. I think this lady was being totally honest. She looked up and said, I have to tell you, I've never stood this close to a black man before. So I looked at her and said, well, I have to tell you something. I'm not black. And she said, what? And that's how they took a picture with her like this. So when she saw the picture, she said, no, we have to take another one. I said, no, you're only going to get one. And I started walking away, and as I started walking away, I could feel her staring at me. You know, you can feel sometimes that people staring at you. So I turned around and said, is everything okay? And she said, not really. And I said, what's wrong? She said, you just said you're not black and I don't understand. So, Dawson, I'm going to explain to you what I explained to this woman at the bar in Hershey, Nebraska. I said, ma'am, ever since I was a little boy old enough to comprehend words, I've been told that because I'm dark, I'm black. You're a kid, young like you are, and you as well. You don't think about that stuff. You just kind of skip through life. But when I got older, I noticed that we use black and white to describe ourselves. And I've always thought that black and white are the two blandest colors in a crayon box. And that's what we use to describe ourselves. And I thought, wow, why do we do that? And then I got old enough to see what the government calls the census report. That's where they ask us a bunch of questions. And one of the questions, one of the segments, is for race. First box to check, white. The second box pertains to my race. They have multiple choices. Black, African American, Negro, running back, rapper, a lot of weird choices. And then they put a line to write something in. Like, if you don't like our choices, write something in. I didn't like their choices. I decided I was going to write in my true color. Everybody in this gym has a true color. I believe that. What you have to do is take the time to find what your color is. So what I tell people to do is this. Go to a hardware store, go in the paint section, grab those paint chips and match them up to your skin until you find your true color. Just stand there. Now, it took me 15 minutes, but I found my true color. If you say I'm black, that's not racist, it's not offensive. I know why you do it. We've been doing it all my life and all yours. But I know my true color. I'm actually a shade of brown called caramel nut. If you don't believe me, look at the card. I got it. Doesn't that sound better than just black? Yeah. I can hear my mom when I was a little boy. Boy, if you don't get your caramel nut button this house right now. So I say to people, go find your color. Find your true color. And when you get old enough to put it on the census report and let the government see what color you are, this is what people have been doing, sending me these photos ever since that video got to 35 million. Got kids going to the paint section, people having skin tone parties, trying to find their color. Some of them come pretty close. It's just amazing. Why do you need to know what color? It's kind of funny. You really don't need to know, but then again, it is kind of fun to know what color you might be. Like, you might be tomato bisque, or prairie pink, or chocolate indulgence. I don't know. Everybody's got a color. So, I got this. Somebody made an angel. A church in Canada made an angel out of paint chips and sent it to me. So there's a message. That is very pretty. There's a message there. And so at that point, it was 33.6 million views, the video. And like I said, now it's at 35. So the point isn't to brag about the number of views. The point is, if you're going to use the colors, make sure you're using the right color. So go find your color. See, that's me showing everybody that I'm caramel nut. And I'm getting older. I'm going to be ancient spice pretty soon. And if anybody wants to know what color you are here afterwards, I've got a little color wheel. I got a whole bunch of you come find out what your color is. You might be any color in this wheel, so we can have a little fun with that. But really, the main thing I want to get back to as I close is hope. Honesty, opportunity, peace, equality, hope. Hope isn't just for one race, it's for all races, it's for all people, And I hope that you got something from the messages that I delivered today, honesty, opportunity, peace, and equality. But along with that, always remember that Martin Luther King stood for so much more than just 4 words. 2 more that resonate with me, and I hope you'll take them with you as you move forward, not just this day, but the rest of your lives, are kindness and respect. Always be kind and always respect one another. And I think when we do those, we'll all be better for it. So with that, remember Dr. Martin Luther King, not just today on his birthday that we celebrate, but always. Remember what he stood for, and if you can walk in that path, I think you'll all be better people for it. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation this morning. Thank you.